Today on Rappler.
If the reports, if true, can be considered as criminal.
The Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs orders 3 officials allegedly prostituting Filipino workers to return to the Philippines. To control floods, the Aquino government plans to relocate 20,000 families living near waterways. And the World Bank warns the devastating effects of global warming could be felt in 20 to 30 years. Hello, I'm Maria Ressa. Welcome to Rappler, your social news network. The Department of Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario orders 3 embassy officials allegedly abusing Filipino workers in the Middle East to come home and face an investigation. This comes after Akbayan Representative Walden Bello identifies the officials Tuesday, saying he discovered the incidents while looking at sex for flight schemes in the Middle East. After a meeting with Bello Wednesday, Del Rosario orders the heads of the diplomatic posts in Kuwait and Damascus, Jordan to come home.
We have asked the heads of posts of Kuwait, of Damascus, of Amman, Jordan, to come home immediately so that they can provide us all the necessary information for us to be able to pursue this case. And we have also asked the persons named to come home so that they can also explain their side. Correct. If the reports, if true, can be considered as criminal.
Calling them predators, Bello identifies the officials allegedly prostituting distressed OFWs as Mario Antonio, an assistant labor attaché in Jordan, Blas Marquez of the Philippine Overseas Labor Office in Kuwait, and a Kim from the Foreign Affairs Department in Syria. After 3 years heading the government panel negotiating with the communist movement, Alexander Padilla wants out of the peace process, saying he's, quote, frustrated and disappointed. Padilla says, maybe I have done as far as where I can go as far as the peace process is concerned. In October 2010, Aquino named Padilla head of the government panel to hold talks with leaders of the National Democratic Front, the political arm of the Communist Party of the Philippines, New People's Army. The NPA has been waging a 4-decade-old insurgency, the longest in Asia. Negotiations between the government and the NPA deadlock after NDF chair Jose Maria Sison backtracked from a, quote, special track he proposed in December 2012. Sison asked to return to the regular track of negotiations, but the government rejected the proposal. Padilla says, they probably didn't realize we would start to put our foot down. They probably thought we would keep on talking for the sake of talking. On Tuesday, President Benigno Aquino appointed Padilla the CEO and president of the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation. The national government plans to move 20,000 families living near waterways in Metro Manila as part of its flood control master plan. In a press briefing Wednesday, Public Works Secretary Rogelio Singson says the government started the relocation but adds it isn't easy to move the families to resettlement sites. The 8 major waterways which need to be cleared are San Juan River, Tullahan River, Mangahan Floodway, Maricaban Creek, Estero Tripa de Gallina, Pasig River, Estero de Sunog Apog, and Estero de Paco. The 20,000 families are some part of about 100,000 families living near waterways that the government plans to relocate in the long term. Singson says relocation was delayed because some local officials requested delaying them because of elections. He adds, now they want to delay it again because of the barangay elections, but we will no longer allow that. Singson and Palace Communications Secretary Ricky Carandang say the government will hold local officials liable if the relocated families return to these cleared areas. Singson says the government's, quote, high-impact, high-priority projects to address flooding include the cleaning of waterways, drainage improvement, upgrading the 12 major pumping stations in Metro Manila, and constructing dikes for low-lying communities. The Philippines Weather Bureau is modernizing its ability to accurately predict the weather. But as Katie Suarez reports, the upgrades aren't enough.
This radar station in Catanduanes is the Weather Bureau's watchdog in Bicol and Samar, the pathway of storms.
Ang main nitong Doppler radar na ito ay ang velocity ang nakukuha namin, motion, yung precipitation or rain amount ay nakukuha na rin ng actual measurement.
After a series of natural and public relations disasters, President Benigno Aquino increased the budget.
Our people's lives and livelihoods are at stake here, and it is the government's responsibility to do everything in its power to be ready for these natural disasters.
The Pag-asa Modernization Bill was drafted to address the Bureau's problems, but the bill failed to pass the Senate last June.
The Pag-asa radar station here in Buena Vista, Bato, Catanduanes was inaugurated by no less than President Benigno Aquino III late last year. Despite the high-profile opening, the station behind me, one of the most advanced in the Pag-asa system, still needs a lot of improvement.
Despite the modern equipment, the job is daunting. At the heart of the station's operations, only 3 computers process weather data. Forecasters use a prepaid USB dongle to connect to the internet. They rely on generators due to the power shortage on the island. But the biggest problem is the lack of personnel. The result, scientists cannot focus on their main job, monitoring the weather.
Kung mag-bag down yung mga ibang equipment, katulad ng mga generator, mga aircon, mga yung computer namin, mas maayos ang trabaho namin dito na hindi kami mapuna ng tao na kung kumpleto sigurong personnel na
For now, the scientists at the Virac radar station will do whatever it takes to keep an eye on the weather. Katie Suarez, Rappler, Bato, Catanduanes.
The World Bank warns the devastating effects of global warming could be felt within this generation. Citing reports from scientists, World Bank President Jim Yong Kim says if the world's temperature rises by 2 degrees centigrade in 20 to 30 years, it will, quote, cause widespread food shortages, unprecedented heat waves, and more intense cyclones. In an update of the World Bank's climate report, scientists focus on the risks of climate change to development in sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and South Asia, home to some of the world's poorest people. Extreme heat would cut crop production and cause widespread food shortages. Many regions would also see a 20% decline in water availability. The United Nations wants to limit global warming to 2 degrees Celsius after a climate research institute warned warming will reach 4 degrees Celsius this century. The United Nations Refugee Agency says the number of people forcibly displaced reaches a 2-decade high of 45.2 million. The agency says war and other crises drove one person from their home every 4.1 seconds in 2012. The total figure of 45.2 million included 28.8 million internally displaced people, 15.4 million border-crossing refugees, and 937,000 asylum seekers. Overall, Afghanistan remains the world's top producer of refugees. UN High Commissioner for Refugees Antonio Guterres says the number of refugees rose to a level unseen since 1994, a year marked by the Rwandan genocide and bloodshed in former Yugoslavia. Defending the U.S. government's secret surveillance program, National Security Agency Director General Keith Alexander says the program stopped more than 50 terror plots since 2001. On Tuesday, Alexander describes 4 foiled plots, including a planned bomb attack on the New York Stock Exchange and a plot to attack the New York subway, which Alexander calls, quote, the first core al-Qaeda plot since 9/11 directed from Pakistan. Alexander and other security officials defend the surveillance programs, saying these provided the U.S. government with critical leads to prevent more than 50 potential terrorist events. The controversy over the spying programs came after former NSA contractor Edward Snowden leaked details to media earlier this month.
People tend not to take them very
Somalia's Al-Qaeda-linked Al-Shabaab insurgents attack a United Nations compound in the capital of Mogadishu Wednesday. UN sources say at least 3 civilians are killed outside the compound as Somali and African Union troops force their way into the complex. Government-run Radio Mogadishu says the attack started after a suicide bomber blew himself up at the gates of the complex. Let's now look at Rappler's Wrap for today, a list of the 10 most important events around the world you shouldn't miss. At number 7, Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan claims victory over anti-government protesters Tuesday after a heavy crackdown. Police arrest dozens of demonstrators in a bid to stamp out nearly 3 weeks of unrest. As the protests appear to lose intensity, Erdogan says he won over the crisis, seen as the biggest challenge yet to his Islamist-rooted government's decade-long rule. At number 9, G8 leaders on Tuesday endorsed calls for a peace conference to be held in Geneva on the Syrian conflict as soon as possible. At the end of a summit in Northern Ireland, the leaders also called for an agreement on Syrian transitional government, quote, formed by mutual consent. Russian President Vladimir Putin earlier met with British Prime Minister David Cameron to talk about Syria. Although both leaders say they agree on the need for a peaceful resolution, they disagree on how to deal with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. And at number 10, archaeologists uncover hidden details of the vast urban structure in the Angkor Wat complex in Cambodia. Using airborne laser scanning called light detection and ranging, LIDAR, they're able to penetrate the dense tropical vegetation that overruns the complex. The study reveals new canals, temples, and unidentified man-made features. This confirms theories Angkor Wat was at the center of a large metropolitan area that housed thousands of people. For the full top 10, visit Rappler.com's The Wrap. The Miami Heat come alive in overtime of Game 6 of the NBA Finals to beat the San Antonio Spurs 103-100. Spurs big man Tim Duncan tallies 30 points and 17 rebounds, but most of it came in the first half. NBA MVP LeBron James stars in the fourth quarter, curiously after losing his headband. But it's veteran shooter Ray Allen who sends the game into overtime after knocking down a three-pointer from the corner. Allen and James continue their stellar play in the extra period to help Miami tie the series at 3 games apiece. The winner-take-all Game 7 will be played Thursday night in Miami. That's Friday morning in the Philippines. Every story on Rappler has a mood meter that gives you 8 emotions to choose from. Click how you feel and your vote comes down to the mood navigator. That's the middle of the front page. It crowdsources the mood of the day. It also gives you the top 10 stories that have affected our readers the most. If you take a look today, these are the stories that have gotten the most number of votes on their mood meter. Interestingly, you know that hashtag Pugad Baboy began on Rappler this week. It is the 3rd day and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stories on the mood navigator that are all hashtag Pugad Baboy. So let's take a look at the 3 that are not. New Zealand boy, 11, father's child with 36-year-old woman, a very strange story. You have 71%, 11% angry, that's 71% afraid. And the other story is one of our top stories, embassy staff prostituting OFWs. You have a whopping red, 95% angry. And finally, the 3rd non-Pugad Baboy story is Subek Clark in another Korean wave. You have 5% angry, 7% amused, 8% annoyed, 10% sad, and 64% happy. Take a look. 7 stories on Pugad Baboy that are all green. 6. This one is annoyed. But that green leads to the mood of the day. Today, most people are happy. That's Rappler's Newscast for today, Wednesday, June 19th, 2013. Visit Rappler.com and watch our newscast Monday to Friday. Tell us how you feel on our mood meter and help us crowdsource the mood of the day. I'm Maria Ressa. As we say at Rappler, tomorrow begins today.